New president vows to end American carnage. Mr. Trump, we are here to vow to end the Trump carnage.
Michael Moore just dropped a bombshell that has everyone talking. Forget the movies. This time, he's going full investigative journalist, exposing the wild truth behind Melania and Trump's marriage. Trust me, it's crazier than you could imagine. We're talking secrets, drama, and revelations that'll have you questioning everything you thought you knew about the first couple. Grab some popcorn. This one's about to get juicy.
Well, I think that the system has already been blown up for me. He has completely destroyed the Republican Party. In my film, John Boehner, the former Speaker of the House, Republican, said there is no Republican Party anymore. It's called the Trump Party. And there is really no Democratic Party anymore because the Democrats are completely impotent and incapable of getting somebody into the White House.
Michael Moore, the self-appointed truth seeker of the universe, has now waded into the Trump swamp and dredged up some alleged truths about the relationship between Melania and Donald. I mean, who knew that after all these years, the man who dodged the draft, didn't pay taxes, and somehow still managed to bankrupt casinos would have a crumbling relationship with the woman who, let's face it, has looked increasingly like a hostage in photos over the years.
On Tuesday. Not only do I feel, to answer your question 10 minutes later, that I feel the same way that I felt a few weeks ago that Trump is toast. Absolutely.
But what really sent the media into a frenzy? Moore had the audacity to point out, with a level of subtlety that only Michael Moore can muster, just how disastrously unqualified Trump was to even, say, run a lemonade stand, let alone the most powerful country in the world. And let's not kid ourselves here. Trump didn't exactly prove to be the second coming of Lincoln, did he? His presidency was less like a well-oiled machine and more like a garage band that somehow got booked for a world tour.
By Inauguration Day in January of 2029. And perhaps historians will see this tour where Bernie and AOC barnstormed the country. Oligarchy versus democracy. And that introduced the idea of we need a whole new person, a kind of person in the White House that is going to fight for the people. And while Bernie may think, well, maybe by 2028 he's going to be too old, you can see just how not old he is. It's just been amazing to watch the tour this week.
If you're enjoying, please subscribe. Trump's reign was a never-ending stream of confusion, poor decisions, and tweets that sounded like the ramblings of a toddler hopped up on too much sugar. If there was an award for most likely to destroy the country while trying to look tough, Trump would have won it twice. And let's not forget how he spent 4 years convincing himself that not only was he right about everything, but that anyone who disagreed with him was part of some vast conspiracy to undermine his genius. Genius, by the way, being defined here as not knowing the first thing about how to run a country, but somehow thinking you're doing it better than everyone else.
It doesn't matter who gets hurt by it. And I don't really see him changing, but I think he knows he's been on TV. He's a performance artist. He knows what to say, and he knows how to make this appeal.
You think it's BS?
I think it's, well, please, I don't use that kind of language. But yes, I think. Megan, come on. I know this is the flagship show of Fox News. I just want to go on the record.
Oh.
Well, we all know that.
I like the way you make me sound. Go on.
It is. Listen, just the fact you and I sitting here, we've lowered the age demographic by at least 36 years during this episode.
What do you mean? I'm ripping on my 100-year-old nana who went to the Kelly file.
No, they're very important. But I think Fox is going to go to commercial fairly soon, probably sooner than I expected.
Not at all.
And
the floor is yours.
They've got to sell something. And listen, I think that everybody now is taking Donald Trump very seriously. Yep. And everybody who thought he was a joke last summer, no way is this going to happen. Mm-hmm. Right. So nobody should treat it like it's a joke now.
So as a Bernie Sanders supporter,
yes.
Do you believe that he's all but out?
Oh, no, I don't believe it's so.
You think he can still take the nomination?
Well, I think he's won 18 states.
One of Trump's most famous feats of incompetence was, of course, his response to the pandemic. When the world was literally on fire, Trump was out there doing what he does best, downplaying the severity of the crisis and treating it like it was just a mild inconvenience. If Trump had treated the pandemic like it was a problem that needed solving instead of a speed bump in his re-election campaign, we might have saved thousands of lives. But no, this is the same guy who suggested we inject bleach into our veins, not exactly the scientific mind we were hoping for in the White House. Speaking of science, remember when Trump was in charge of handling climate change? Of course, you don't, because that was never a thing. Instead, Trump's environmental policy was a masterpiece of denial and destruction.
We need people running for office as independents, like Bernie does. He does just fine. Now, maybe in your state or your city, that's not the best thing to do. But less, Bernie is not a member of the Democratic Party. Neither am I. And there's a reason for that. It should be evident by now. And we're not going to survive. If we think the Democrats are the cavalry and the cavalry is going to ride in and save us.
Climate change? Fake news, according to Trump. It was as though he thought if he just ignored it long enough, it would go away like a bad tweet. His idea of protecting the environment? Reversing regulations that actually work to protect our air, water, and wildlife, and encouraging more drilling, more pollution, and less accountability. He wanted to drill in protected areas like it was some kind of hobby. It was as if he thought the planet was just a giant parking lot for SUVs and golf courses. Why care about the environment when you can turn it into an endless cash machine, right? Trump's administration wasn't just disastrous in terms of policy, it was also a complete circus of unethical behavior. From his cozy relationship with dictators to his obsession with self-enrichment, it felt like every decision he made was in direct contradiction to the idea of serving the people.
What was the word? Groceries. Okay. Listen. This is the gift of Trump, if I could put it that way, that he has already started to turn his own people against him. They're not quite there yet, but when they start going to the doctor and there's no Medicaid payment, and they're going to have to pay that doctor for their children and all of that, just go down the whole list of things that it's going to cost them more and more money. It's going to be harder and harder to live. And they're going to understand that he's the one that made this happen. And maybe he's thinking, well, I'm really good at lying. And if you just say it long enough, price of eggs, price of eggs, price of eggs, price of eggs, that they'll go with that.
Oh, and let's not forget the whole family business vibe he brought to the White House. I mean, I'm sure Jared Kushner was just the best person to handle peace in the Middle East. If you've ever wondered what happens when you let someone with zero diplomatic experience try to broker international peace deals, just look at Jared Kushner's accomplishments, which I'm sure are prominently displayed somewhere on his parents' fridge. Then, there's the economy. Now, Trump liked to tell everyone that he was some sort of economic genius, right? Sure, he gave tax cuts to the rich, boosted stock prices temporarily, and generally patted himself on the back for what he considered unprecedented success. But if you really dug into it, you'd see that the economic boom Trump touted was built on shaky foundations. The tax cuts were a gift to the wealthy, while everyone else was left with a pile of inflation. And let's not even get started on the deficit.
These are people that if they don't like it here, they can leave. And I don't know who's going to miss them, but I guess some people will. I see them complaining. They're complaining constantly. They're free to leave if they want. And if they want to leave, that's fine. And if they want to stay, that's fine. But the people have to know. And politicians can't be afraid to take them on. They hate our country. They hate it, I think, with a passion. Now, it's possible I'm wrong. The voter will decide. But when I hear the way they talk about our country, when I hear the anti-Semitic language they use, when I hear the hatred they have for Israel, and the love they have for enemies like Al-Qaeda, then you know what? I will tell you that I do not believe this is good for the Democrat Party. Certainly it's not the party that I've...
Under Trump, it ballooned like a hot air balloon on a mission to crash land into a national disaster. The man couldn't balance a budget if his life depended on it. He'd probably put a $1 billion loan in the miscellaneous column if he had the chance. And as if that wasn't enough, Trump's foreign policy was like a game of international Jenga. Every time he tried to make a move, the entire structure was at risk of falling apart. He alienated allies, cozied up to autocrats, and made America look like the global laughingstock. His interactions with NATO were downright cringeworthy, like a spoiled kid throwing a tantrum because the other kids didn't want to play by his rules. In Trump's mind, diplomacy was just another word for, what can I get out of this? His administration had no interest in forging relationships based on mutual respect or understanding. Instead, it was all about how much he could squeeze out of everyone, like a bad business deal that no one signed up for.
But I'm sorry. I can't go through another November 5th like we just went through. And in these 3-4 months since then, what we're watching happen every day, every hour you turn on MSNBC and it's something else. What was it 2 hours ago? Oh, they're dismantling the civil rights office of the Department of Homeland Security. And if anything has proven that we need a civil rights office in Homeland Security, it's what has happened to Mahmoud Khalil in the last couple of weeks. This is the Columbia University graduate student who was arrested and disappeared to Louisiana, not committed a single crime, not accused of a single crime. All he has done is to try and stand up for his people, the Palestinian people, with his freedom of speech rights that he has as a legal permanent resident of the United States of America.
But it wasn't just the international community that got the short end of the stick. Trump's approach to governance domestically was a masterclass in division. He didn't unite the country, he tore it apart. If you ever wanted to know what it looked like when a president tried to split the nation in half, Trump gave you a front row seat. His rhetoric was the perfect recipe for chaos, pitting people against each other, sowing distrust, and making every political discussion feel like a war zone. Whether it was attacking the media or telling his followers to stand by, Trump turned every issue into a fight instead of a conversation. And let's not forget his absolute inability to take responsibility for anything. The guy who never owned up to a mistake in his life suddenly found himself in charge of an entire country. Whether it was the economy, the pandemic, or his complete lack of understanding about how government works, Trump was always pointing fingers at someone else.
The majority of this country didn't want this to happen. The majority of your fellow Americans, they just didn't vote for this. The Electoral College voted for it, but not us. I know it's strange, isn't it? Second time it's happened in 16 years. And to be honest, if it had gone the other way, I'd support the other side in their feeling that something just isn't right.
It's the Democrats' fault. It's the fake news media. It was like watching a toddler try to explain why they broke the vase, but instead of an apology, you just got a tantrum. But perhaps the most damaging thing Trump did was normalize incompetence. Under his leadership, being unqualified and arrogant was celebrated as a virtue. As long as you could talk a big game and fire off some insults on Twitter, you were good to go. It was as though we were living in a bizarre alternate universe where expertise and experience were just suggestions, and being a billionaire with no government experience was the qualification of the century. No wonder we ended up with a man who thought draining the swamp meant filling it with more greedy, unqualified people. Now, Michael Moore didn't just expose the obvious flaws in Trump's administration. He's making a compelling case that Trump's lack of capability wasn't some random mistake. It was a deliberate design flaw, a feature, not a bug. The man didn't just mess things up by accident. He actively worked against anything that might improve the country. Healthcare, he tried to dismantle it. The economy, he managed to push it into a precarious spot with tax cuts for the rich and trade wars with everyone, including the allies we desperately needed. Global relations, a dumpster fire. The world saw us as a punchline, a nation led by a toddler with Twitter access.
The Democrats are stopping all of these good things that we're providing. We're providing the greatest package of benefits that this country's ever provided. The biggest part of that's going to be tax cuts for the middle class and for businesses, small businesses, employers, people that hire people in jobs. And if it's shut down, it's only going to be, if there's a shutdown, it's only because of the Democrats. And they would really be taking away a lot from our country and from the people of our country.
But the most infuriating part of it all, Trump didn't just fail at his job. He sabotaged it on purpose. Whether it was his absurd handling of the pandemic, his blatant corruption, or his fondness for cozying up to dictators, Trump wasn't just mismanaging things, he was actively working to make them worse. The only thing that seemed to matter to him was power and personal gain. The rest of us? Well, that was an afterthought. And even after all the damage he caused, there's Trump, still strutting around like he's some kind of genius. The narcissism is so profound that he can't even see it. He genuinely believes he did a great job. Forget the constant scandals, the never-ending lies, the massive incompetence that defined his time in office. He still thinks he was the best president ever. If you need an example of how detached from reality he is, look no further than his endless delusional self-praise. He doesn't even grasp the colossal damage he did. To him, if he's not winning, then nobody's winning. It's like watching a child with a magnifying glass convinced they're the ruler of the world while they're just burning everything down in front of them.
You know, he just wasn't engaged. And you kind of wish you had his version of non-engagement, because this president-elect doesn't seem engaged at all. He's more engaged with tweeting about Alec Baldwin on SNL.
Yeah.
5 hours after the show finishes at 1 a.m. By 6 a.m., he's not funny, sad, not watchable. And it's like...
But let's not kid ourselves. The Trump era wasn't just a bad presidency. It was a complete disaster, a dumpster fire of epic proportions that charred the very fabric of American governance. Moore's expose didn't just uncover a few skeletons in the closet. It opened up the entire crumbling mansion of deceit, incompetence, and chaos that defined those 4 years. Trump's actions, policies, and behavior have left a mark on this country that will take years, if not decades, to undo. The damage is so deep, it's like trying to fix a house that's been hit by an asteroid. No amount of repairs will ever truly restore it to its former self. Every decision he made seemed calculated to enrich himself and his cronies, with little regard for the damage inflicted on the country's institutions or its people. And let's be honest, the fact that a chunk of the electorate still stands by him speaks volumes about the collective mental gymnastics required to ignore the wreckage he's left behind. As long as we allow people like Trump and his minions to call the shots, it's only going to get worse. Because the only thing they know how to build is more chaos.
And I'll just say one more thing. What I love about the tour is that Bernie is putting forth the idea that the Democrats have let us down in such a profound way.
At the end of the day, we all know one thing for sure. Trump didn't make America great again. He made it a circus. And we're all just trying to survive the show while he takes his victory lap. So yeah, Michael Moore might have caused an uproar, but he's not the problem here. The problem is a man who still believes the hype and refuses to take responsibility for the absolute train wreck of a presidency he left behind. If we've learned anything, it's that when Trump says he's doing a great job, you should probably brace yourself for the next disaster.